The Torah is holy and divine, but also relevant and timely, and there's a great example in this week's parsha, which is a double portion, Vayakhel-Pekudei. This learning is in the merit of my grandmother, Esther bat Shaul, may her neshama have an aliyah. There are more parshiot or sections of the Torah than there are weeks in the year. So oftentimes we have to double up, and this is one of those weeks. And these last two parshiot are the last two parshiot of the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus. So as we know, it is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. There's 5 books of the Torah. We're just about to finish the second book of the Torah and start the third next week, which means that we are 2/5 of the way through the Jewish calendar, essentially, through the Torah. So narrative-wise, the Jewish people were freed from slavery in Egypt. They, at the bottom of Har Sinai, at the bottom of Mount Sinai, received the 10 Commandments, accepted this covenant with God to obey mitzvot in exchange for being God's people, having this covenant with God. And so we've been getting a lot of these mitzvot, and one of the mitzvot that we are, reminded of in this week's parsha is the mitzvah of Shabbat, of the, one day a week where God rested, and so the Jewish people rest as well. So at the beginning of the first parsha, Moses brings the whole of of Bnei Israel together and tells them these are the things that God commanded you to do. So let's just start with this very first sentence. On 6 days, work may be done, but on the 7th day, you shall have a Sabbath of complete rest. So in Hebrew, it's sheshet yamim ta'aseh melacha. Sheshet yamim, 6 days, ta'aseh melacha. Ta'aseh is future tense, but it's also the passive form of the verb. And so that's why the translation is work may be done. It's passive tense. It's not you shall do work on 6 days, but work can be done on those 6 days. This wording, of course, is intentional because all the wording of the Torah is. What it's saying, its passive voice, is because in those 6 days when you can do all the work that you possibly could want to do, it's not the main thing. It's not your whole identity, and it's not all through your own effort. There's an idea that you don't work for the sake of working, for the sake of making money, for the sake of success or anything. You work so that you can make a vessel, a kli, for God to send in blessings. It's like, a guy prays every day, I want to win the lottery, and he goes to heaven, and he's like, why didn't you ever let me win the lottery, God? And God is like, well, you never bought a ticket. You gotta have a job and go to work and show up and allow for there to be a space for blessings to come in. You have to do your own hishtadlut. There's hishtadlut, which is your own effort, and bitachon, trust in God, and then emunah, just faith that things will work out. And you gotta have a balance of all of it. The other thing about Shabbat and work is that if you live your whole 6 days so involved in the physical, in the tangible, in the material world, on the 7th day when you have to shut your brain off, when you have to stop thinking about those things, you're gonna have a very difficult time. If you say work is for work and Shabbat is for Shabbat, and you're able to make the separation in your brain, you're going to be able to be healthy about both of them. I for sure struggle with this. It's very hard not to have in mind what's going on a Saturday when you're, not online. But I think it's all about, of course, as we all know, balance. There's also an idea that being so absorbed in the material, in the physical world, is actually a form of idolatry, or to worship these false idols, these things that are not God. And it always makes me think about, in the ancient days, all of the ancient civilizations, they had gods for each thing. So they had a god of rain, or a god of sun, or a god of this, or a god of that. In Greek mythology, it's the seasons and all these things, the underworld, whatever. It's because they were mistaking the vessel for the source. And what I mean by that is it's like worshiping a sink faucet when you really mean to worship the ocean. That is God. God is even greater than the ocean. But in comparison, if you worship the sun, it's God's work through the sun. And we can be the vessels for God's blessings. But we don't worship the vessels when there is the source. There's actually a Hasidic idea that people shouldn't work at all, that God made the whole universe and you're going to go to work and piddle around on an Excel document and think that's work? Whatever, this idea that it's making gestures before the king, according to the Talmud. That's such an insult that your work should be considered the same as God's. But we're told, on these days, work shall be done. So we're actually being told you're allowed to work. It's not gestures before the king. It's making the world around you a vessel for God's blessings to come in. And I really, really, really like that idea. Shabbat Shalom.